Morning folks, Dave Canterbury with the Pathfinder School out here at the Pathfinder School Forge area. I thought what I would do today is do a little something different in the Woodcraft on a Budget series and actually make a woodcrafting tool. We haven't talked a whole lot about tools other than jackknives and belt knives yet in this series. We're going to continue with tools here in a few days, but I thought today we'd just take a break and make a tool. And a tool that I found in Bernard Mason's Woodcraft book from the early 1900s was called the crooked knife. And my buddy Steve Davis did a video on a crooked knife at Stillwater Woodcraft, but I wanted to do a video today actually making one to the scale drawing from that book and make it out here at the Pathfinder Forge area and kind of show you that process and then show you what the end product looked like. And if you're not familiar with a crooked knife looks like this. It's very similar to a spoon carving type knife from Mora or someone else with one single beveled edge with a hook on it, so that you can actually use it to gouge out wood for indentations and things of that nature. It's a carving tool, and it was used throughout the eastern woodlands all the way up into the Pacific Northwest in Canada by the old-time woodcrafters. So I thought we'd make this tool today on camera, show you how that's done. Stay with me, and we'll get started. Now, according to what I see in the plans of the drawing, you want this blade to be 5 inches long. So we've snapped this file off to 5 inches. Now we need to shape it a little bit if we're going to forge it, and then we need to anneal it, and which means we need to heat it up and then let it air cool, because the file is going to be very hard because it has been heat treated and tempered as is. So we need to remove that tempering basically and make this a softer metal. And the easiest way to do that is to superheat it and then let it air cool, not quench it in anything. Then it will be soft enough that we can then shape our edge really well. Then we can heat it up again and turn the crook in the knife. But before we do that, I want to pound a little bit of this. I want to forge a little bit of this down at a beveled angle. Now we've got to straighten out this tail a little bit here, because that's what we're going to use to mount it to our handle. So we've got to get it a little bit more in line the way it was to begin with. Alright, so now we need to drop this tang down and bend it over. Okay, I got a couple split pieces of wood that I'm going to use for my handle, and I've got to figure out how it's going to sit in the wood for my hand, either this way or this way, depending on whether I'm going to use this tool right or left-handed, because they're not really ambidextrous. So if this is my beveled edge and it's going to hook this way, this knife is made to be a right-handed tool. It's not a big deal. I'm ambidextrous, so it's okay. Now, I don't have any way to carve inlets into this thing. This thing needs to be inletted, so this sits in here and is lashed on after the handle's carved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn the inlets in, because I haven't made carving tools. So I'm going to use this tool to burn the inlet in to this handle, and then I'll carve it after the fact. So I got to heat this up just enough to do that. There's my inlet. Now that I have that inlet burned in, put this back down in the gravel, let it cool, and I can use my jackknife at this point to go in and carve out some of these burned areas. That will allow me to get a little deeper in there where I need to go. And I can just use the point of my knife to scrape that out. This pocket knife happens to have an awl on it, or it's got a little gouge end on it. And I can use that to clean the rest of this inlet out really well, so that it's ready to accept my tool. Alright, now we're just going to do a little bit of handle shaping here, where a blade's going to go into our handle with our pocket knife. I'm thinking about how I'm going to be holding this, carving it comfortable for that. Now this part of the equation is pretty critical, because you want this thing almost as sharp as you can get it. But remember, you got to heat this thing back up again to bend that hook in the knife. So it doesn't have to be extremely sharp. But you want to remove all the material you're going to have to remove off this thing now, because once you bend this blade, you're not going to be able to take mass amounts of materials off of it again. There's a book out there called The $50 Knife Shop, and Marty Munson turned me onto that book. And it's got a block form on it like this. And if you get this thing, you're going to have a little bit of a convex edge on this knife, or any knife that you do like this for the most part. But if you run that file across the top of that edge of that board will get it to where you've got a tight angle right there, so that you are getting that blade ground down as far as you can. And as long as you're not eating into wood, you're still grinding off metal. And so I just lay that thing on that piece of wood and just start cutting it until I get to the point where it's almost cutting wood. Because then I've ground that blade down about as thin as it's going to go. And I'm getting real close to that. And you can look down that blade and you can see the thickness of that blade. If you got a good set of eyes, you can see the thickness of that blade in the areas that you need to work. And this is a really good technique if you're making any type of knife blade, really, is to put some kind of a form block on it like this to keep you right on the edge of that knife.